And, I love having met good people in the state of Tennessee over these last 2 years. And one of them is in studio with me today. His name is Steve Abramowicz. He's going to be with us for the better part of the hour. He is with Mill Creek View, and you hear me talking often about Steve. And Steve and I were talking off the air. He said, "Man, you sound ticked off." And I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "No, you sound annoyed. You sound gruff." And I'm like, "It's just my tone. I don't think I'm in a bad mood, but maybe I am. I don't know." Anyway, Steve Abramowicz joins us. That's good. I need that. I need that honest, earnest, good feedback. Thank you, Mr.
I'm either going to make it worse or better. We'll see how that goes. Or the 30 minutes, if you can.
Just by walking in the room, you've made my day better.
Look at you, smiling.
How's it going with you?
It's going great. Driving here reminds me of this town was built for horse and buggy because we had a lot of traffic on Hillsborough Road. So.
Oh, it could be worse. We could be, I don't know.
Could be raining like Seattle.
Yeah, well, that's true. Do you tell yourself that often?
Everyone says, "How's it going?" I said, "It's not Seattle and it's not raining."
That's true. For those who don't know, maybe have missed our visits together or haven't taken my advice and gone over to the mcview.us website, Steve hails from out on the, we call it the left coast, right?
Leftist coast for sure. They keep breaking records. They're now number one again. Washington first in the U.S. for parents supporting adult children 22 to 40. 71% of parents financially support their adult kids.
What?
Doesn't surprise me one bit.
What was the percentage?
71%. Or
22 to 40?
Tennessee is ranked number 22. Your beloved Alabama is 24. That translates to $853 per month per Washington family per grown-up adult in diapers downstairs smoking pot and playing video games.
So, what was your experience leaving home?
Well, I'm glad you phrase it that way. 20 years it was home. I raised a family there. I got married there, fell in love with it there. The last 5 years were the worst, but I'm from California, so I got to be an observer of another place before coming here.
Well, not even, and I don't even mean like leaving the left coast, but I meant like leaving home. Like when you
was never home. That was the thing. It was my kid's home for sure. It was my wife's home. She was born and raised from there. She doesn't like me to talk about her publicly, but for me, it was always an observation, and when I could observe the last 5 years with the current governor and the future governor as Attorney General, which is a layup, we'll talk about why, I had no qualms saying there's better. And so Tennessee was more like where I grew up in Napa Valley in the 70s and 80s.
I'm fascinated by what you just read me about the amount of parents that are continuing to support their children. And when I say leaving home, I was 17 years old when I left for college because I was a late birthday. I was a September 1st birthday. Mm-hmm. And so I was a week before my 18th birthday when I'd already graduated high school at the age of 17. And I knew, and obviously I went back to visit and I went back for weeks on end and whatever. But I knew when I was leaving for college, I wasn't going back to my grandparents' house, right? And there wasn't really a question about that. Now, did I receive support? Of course I did. Did I receive, food and, my grandma slipping me $20 or $50 here or there? Absolutely. No doubt. But it never, and this isn't that long ago, Steve, it never occurred to me that it was an option to, at 23, say, hey, I'm moving back in. It was just never a thought.
No, and that's the thing. When I moved there from California, I had a job. I would get in at 5 a.m. I would get home at 8 p.m. from dark to dark. I was pale as a ghost, probably weighed 10 pounds less than I do now. And it was a grind, right? You're working, you're hustling, you're out of college, you're getting your career going. I moved to Seattle. Well, actually, no, I used to fly up to Seattle every other Tuesday on Alaska Airlines from San Francisco to Seattle. And the first thing it dawned on me, I used to cover Microsoft. And I used to go to those meetings, and it dawned on me like, what's missing here? And it was the phones didn't ring. So, because they're all emailing each other, right? Mm-hmm. This is before I even had it. I didn't have email. That's how old I am. A little gray here. So, point is that I think the human connection in the Pacific Northwest, where it's gray and dark and raining most of the time, let's face it, if it's not raining, it's still overcast and gray. Before global warming, thank you very much. But the point is that there weren't a lot of humans doing human stuff like talking, communicating, getting married, dating, going out to bars, watching sports. I mean, I remember very clearly when the Mariners went on that tear and had tied the winningest record in regular season, and completely tanked against the Yankees, which I was glad about because I'm a fan and I got to fly to New York and watch the World Series against the Mets. Seattle, their spirit broke. That was like their one time when they could all rally around something they had in common, which was sports, and it disappointed them, and it all went downhill from there.
Is that Griffey Jr.?
No, that was after him. That was Aaron Boone.
Edgar Martinez, he was in that.
He was there, yeah. Ichiro.
Yeah, I think I remember that.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to have you here. I'm glad you're in the state of Tennessee. You do great work over at MCView.
You seem happier already.
Well, you just basically the conversation is making me it's pleasing me. So let's start locally. You and I have not talked about this. We've not previewed it. We've not gone over it prior to this discussion. So I have no idea where your headspace is on the governor's proposal, what he's calling the Education Scholarship Act. I'm predisposed to believing that anything that gives us parents more choice is a good thing.
Yeah, I'm pro-choice.
I believe in it in that arena. What are your overall thoughts on this idea?
When it comes to education, I want parents to make the decision, because one of the things I saw in Seattle was that they stopped making the decisions and they outsourced it all. They wanted to have babies really badly, but they didn't want to raise those babies very badly. They wanted the state to do it. They wanted the schools to do it. And so that's why you have these statistics showing that they can't read, they can't write, they can't engage, they can't be human, they can't be social. And so when you see Governor Lee, who, by the way, he's coming up on his 8th year in office, right? When he ran originally, he had his 10 for 10 proposals. School choice was on there. So here it is, last minute, fourth quarter, end of regular season, and he's finally moving the ball on this. And he's got Sexton coming out saying, I'm for it too. And he's pretty much at the done deal. But what I also notice is that the left, the ones who love to suck at the teat of the public trough, including the Department of Education, are blowing their minds. They cannot believe they're losing their minds. And so you're seeing the news. Our good friend at the Channel 5 is talking about how this is a tragedy. This is terrible. This is stealing funds from kids. How can that possibly be? If the kid isn't present, there's no funds. If the kid takes the funds to a private school, the funds follow the kid.
No, the argument being made by people like Williams over at 5 and others, Heidi Campbell's one of them. Sure. You'll see the Joneses, Justin Jones, all the rest of them.
The union people.
They claim that they want to improve educational opportunities for Tennessee children. But unless it's funneling more money into the failure of the system that exists, they're against it.
They never talk about the current failure of the system that they're defending, right?
Right.
Kids can't read. There's crime.
It's always about
violence. Money. For those guys, sure. They're not in school. I don't even know if they have kids in school. I think I saw Heidi Campbell has a private school student, so she doesn't even know what the kids are going through. But the ones that are trapped, I mean, let's just look at Memphis, okay? Memphis. It is part of our state.
Example.
Nobody likes to talk about it, but it is part of Tennessee. It's a big darn state. 2 time zones that I know of, maybe 3. And it is falling apart. They are trapped. What's wrong with giving them a potential choice? At least try it, because what you're currently doing for the last 40 years has been a massive failure. And the National Association of Teachers, NEA, the National Education Association, they love that. Because the administrations are bloated, the union dues come in, they get to reelect people, which are usually not Republicans, which means are not in favor of Tennessee values, because this is a Republican supermajority state. And all you're hearing is those folks who love that side of the equation, the statists, say, let's keep it status quo. You're killing the kids, you're killing grandma, don't do it, you're polluting the water. Well, that's not true.
Well, and if you talk to someone on the political left about it, they would suggest to you that it's a money problem. And then you say, okay, well,
$10,000 per kid.
Well, and recognizing that in the last 6 years, the overall budget in the state of Tennessee for education has gone from $9 billion to $14 billion. So it's increased. It's increased by half in 5 years, and you've seen no appreciable increase in testing stores because it's not about the money.
Well, they'll blame COVID, but of course this was happening long before that.
Well, and you question them, okay, well then how much is enough? And they look at you like you just ate a bug, right? You're like, well, if it's all about money, and if money is going to be a guarantee of improvement, then tell me how much money you need.
I think you had somebody that you and I know relatively well from their opinions on this show, probably sitting in this chair, hopefully disinfected, that agreed that it was all about the money. And if there was just more money thrown at the problem, we would fix education. Well, guess what? I'm here to tell you that Seattle did that. California did that. When I say Seattle, it's, of course, the whole state of Washington. You cannot throw money at a school district that is loaded with union members and administrators and principals and vice principals and secretaries of principals and all the rest and expect that kid to come to school every day and learn reading, writing, and arithmetic, especially when you start sticking in that federal funded strings attached CRT slash pornographic material, confusing the heck out of them. And now they want to put, even here, sadly, they want to put health professionals inside the schools. So my question on social media was, are they going to be able to write prescriptions? Because that's following the money, like you said. They don't care about, can they read? Can they become the next Supreme Court Justice of the United States? Can they be the next president like Polk or Jackson? It's just, can they move through the system, collect dollars, and reinvest those dollars into your people who will probably elect Democrats? Ask Cohen. You said earlier, you were talking about the two Jewish congressmen in
Kustoff being one of them, one from Tennessee, and Max Miller.
Those are Republicans.
Yeah, two Republicans.
But on the Democrat side,
Steve Cohen's obviously Jewish himself.
And what district does he represent?
He's in Shelby Cay's over there in Memphis.
Why can't him and Jones get together and fix education if it was all about money?
Well, and some of the most poorly performing districts in the state of Tennessee are run by Democrats.
Ironic, isn't it?
It's just interesting that when you find the most crime-ridden areas in the state, when you find the areas that are the least educated in the state of Tennessee, there's a unifying factor in so many of these things, and those factors involve Democrats being in charge.
Let's talk about this. So Lee's been there 9 years, right? 7 years, going on his 8th. But
has he been there that long? This predates me.
2 terms, so for 8 years.
Has he been? I thought he. Yeah, I guess we're in year 6 or so. Anyway, yeah, he's been there.
Next year's his last year,
right? Yeah, sure. Okay. Yeah.
So there's 8 years of K through 8, at least for this education that currently existed, and then whatever was here that predated him, which he's not responsible for, but there it is, and he did run on the idea of making change, and he won elections, so he was supposed to deliver on that. Now he possibly is, but think of that generation of kids that went through that system, trapped in those schools. Now they're out, right? Some of them are probably in college if they're lucky, or not in the working force that have to deal with this inflation. But the key to me is, what are they going to deliver to society as an uneducated public school graduate? Because 90-something% of the kids in America go to public school. Private school, it's the enemy, but there's not a lot of them. So here they come, and now they're going to say, well, what do they do for a career? Well, I'd love to say they all go to work for Microsoft to make millions of dollars, and then they all go to Boeing here, or not here, but FedEx here and make millions of dollars. But they aren't going to do that. They have to do something. So are they going to go back into teaching, meaning they're teaching the next generation of kids that they didn't learn anything, to not learn anything? Or are they going to go into politics and become lawmakers? And if you listen to some of them talk, I think that's exactly what happened. They don't know civics. They don't know how the government works. So they get in front of TikTok and they say these ridiculous things that sound great to their voters, but make no common sense and will not fix the country. And that's the problem. That's where the next generation is a problem. And so what they used to say, as California goes, so goes the country. Well, as California, Oregon, and Washington have gone, so go the other. And that's why the mantra of my show is, don't California, you're Tennessee. Don't Washington State, you're Tennessee. Don't Oregon, you're Tennessee. Don't Nevada, you're Tennessee. Don't New York City, you're Tennessee, because they did it wrong. And you can observe that and don't make the same mistake.
So circling back to the proposal, and the devil will be in the details, and obviously we've yet to see the details. My one area of concern, while I'm all about giving families and parents more choice, more options, and removing the monetary impediment for them to be able to make those choices, I also fear the concept of the government becoming involved in private school, or more especially homeschooling. And I've heard from a lot of homeschool parents
You're not wrong.
Who say, I don't want anything to do with this. I'm not touching any of this money because I fear once I do, I'm going to be beholden on some level or responsible on some level for curriculum or whatever. If I allow that proverbial camel's nose under the tent, then here they are, and now they're in control of my homeschool.
They gave us a whiff of that with the vaccination schedules that the homeschooling parents had to, and we had to get Jody involved to knock it off. But you're absolutely right. But there's also a key factor that I have not heard talked about enough, and I wanted to bring that to your attention and your listeners' attention. Washington is one of 2 states that had illegal immigrants, up from 2017 to 2021. You'd think it was a 50-state problem, right? But really only 2. Florida had 80,000. Washington had 60,000. And that's according to the Pew Research. In the state of Tennessee, they spend $1 billion. I have it right there for you. You can break it all down. $1 billion on illegal immigrant, not immigrant, but illegal immigrant education and services. If you took that money, which is not supposed to go to illegals, right? Citizens, veterans, people who worked here and lived here and saved for Social Security and saved for Medicare and want to retire one day, use that money. There's everything you're looking for in Nashville, at the Capitol. That's your budget right there. Stop doing what you're not supposed to do and spend it on what you want to do, and you can expand charters to all 95 counties. Done deal. But why won't they? I don't know. But there's the stats.
Yeah, $971.3 million, the estimated cost of illegal immigration to Tennessee taxpayers on an annual basis in 2023.
This year.
So
Wait till next year.
that's probably going to that's going to exceed $1 billion in taxpayer funding. Steve Abramowicz with us with Mill Creek View. Go to mcview.us for more information on Steve. 123. You recently interviewed Dinesh D'Souza, right?
Dinesh, yeah.
Dinesh,
yes,
not Dinesh.
I'm actually was basking in the glow of the viral nature. He cut it up into clips and put it out on Twitter. So yeah, check that one out.
Let's talk about that. We're talking with Steve Abramowicz of Mill Creek View about education opportunities in the state of Tennessee and how he can. Contrary to what we might believe about a leftist state like Washington. They were invested in this some 20 years ago, as you were describing to me during the break. There was a push for charter schools, I guess, then, and it was squashed by, union leftists, I would assume?
I mean, school choice has been around since at least the 70s when I was in school, whether it was going to be a religious school or a secular school or, one of these FDR-type schools, whatever. So it's been around with us for a long time, but it became an actual fight over the hearts and minds and brains of our kids. Intensified in the 2000s, absolutely. And Washington State, being a very union town, was ground zero, if not right next door in California. So they're all following the same playbook. And that was also at the time, 2004, when a guy named Dino Rossi, I don't know if people ever heard that name here, I interviewed him, episode 14, back when it was a Washington only 200 episodes ago. But
do you remember my episode number?
Yeah, because I will always remember the one that was missing. It was 81. It's also my football high school jersey number.
It's fascinating that you can remember all of these episode numbers.
Yeah, well, that and Dinesh D'Souza since it was yesterday, but yeah.
Which episode was that, Dinesh?
154, I believe.
So 154 of them.
Yeah.
Man, oh man. And they said it wouldn't last, Steve.
They said, "What do you think you're doing?" I said, I'll be so rich." I haven't been paid a cent. So.
Well, if somebody told you that, they need to be whipped because that's not radio and it's not a money making operation.
It was you. You lied to me.
Right, sure.
Lovers of truth.
Well, let me take we have to take another quick time out, and when we come back, I do want to ask you about Dinesh and how that conversation went. And if you've seen, I've not seen Police State.
I did.
And you have.
It would be a podcast dereliction of duty not to have seen it first.
I would think so. Jim has a question on the scholarship front. Why does the school scholarship have to be renewed every year? I don't know that I've seen that level of detail. I don't know that anyone has seen that level of detail. We have the basic parameters of what they're trying to do, but until the General Assembly gets their meat hooks into all of this, we don't really know how all of this is going to
We don't even know how they spend the lottery money, so how are we going to know how they're going to spend the money that isn't on paper yet and where it's going to come from? So
that remains to be seen, Jim. If you have any questions or thoughts for myself or my guest, Steve Abramowicz of Mill Creek View, then by all means give us a call. I asked, you had Dinesh on. I mean, I understand you're scraping the bottom of the barrel now, Steve. You know, you've gone through Matt Murphy. And
all downhill from there.
No, that's a great get, a great snag.
Although I had Pamela right before you, so it's questionable who's the downhill slide.
Well, I don't think there's any question about that. Police State, you've seen it.
I saw it. Yeah,
Recommend it?
Yeah. I saw it on my TV, so biggest screen as I was going to find. So I don't know if it makes a difference, but Nick Searcy plays a what would you call it, a fictionalized version of the FBI's problems. But then there was real people on there like Kyle Seraphin and Steve Friend, who are FBI whistleblowers that have gone before Congress. They have also been on my show. Steve's been on 3 times. So
is it a documentary?
It's like a infotainment documentary. So he sits down, he talks to real live people, especially the aunt of the J6er who killed himself. And so you're getting this drama, this, Dateline NBC type of show, but then there's some fiction in there that makes it movie worthy, where Nick Searcy plays the FBI field agent who's basically saying we're going full bore, we're going to drag him out in front of the cameras, we're going to make a show of it to try to get the perception. And that's where Steve Friend and Kyle Seraphin come in, where they were giving consultation as to here's how it works. So it's a combo. It's entertainingly enough to get you through the 2 hours, but yet there's real documentarian facts in there, almost like a Roger and Me.
What's the tell me about the premise behind Police Day? What's the concept behind it?
I shouldn't spoil alert my show because it's in there, but I literally ask him, the name of it is Police State, and the tagline is, are we living in its police state? Are we? And his answer is, yeah, we're getting darn close. It's not North Korea, but they are spying on us. They are using the weaponization of the government to go after innocent people, whether they be here in Tennessee praying in front of a Planned Parenthood or texting your friend about January 6th or whatever the case may be.
They're also picking winners and losers when they do it, too.
That's been America's problem for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're talking Wall Street and the rest. But in terms of who's going to be prosecuted versus who's going to get away with it, you betcha. That's the police state premise.
How did you find Dinesh?
You mean
just from a personality standpoint.
I thought you meant how'd you get him on the show?
Oh, no.
He's brilliant. He's absolutely brilliant and very kind. He's cut up the show into clips and put it on his social media. He's got a bigger presence than I do. Glad to be back on it. He is, I kind of thought I was out of my league. I probably am. Let's be honest. I was out of my league. He's brilliant, right? The dude was, born in Mumbai, moved to America, worked with Ronald Reagan, the guy, and has now come out of his 8-month prison sentence where he was politically targeted. Probably the first one, him and the guy with the Benghazi video where they said it was the video's fault, not all the stuff that we've now learned about the Benghazi attack.
Mm-hmm.
Those two were the first political hit jobs about the First Amendment. He came back stronger than ever, like a superhero, saying that if I quit, they win, so I'm coming back. And now he's had like 8 movies, 10 books, speaking circuit. Brilliant guy who can talk firsthand about the First, Second, Fourth, 18th Amendment.
And he can talk firsthand about what he believes to be a police state, in as much as he has been politically persecuted. I mean, I had forgotten that he spent time in jail until you mentioned it during the break.
Yeah, and he mentioned it on the show, and I asked him, and he said no holds barred to ask me whatever you want. So he was very generous with that. Yeah, I did 8 months, looked around, said, gosh, a lot of these people have absolutely no recourse. They can't go to their politicians. They can't go to the police. They can't get a lawyer. They can't do what you would normally do to defend yourself against this Leviathan, the big bad state. And this was a long time ago, right? This is during the Clinton administration, and I guess the Obama administration is the one who actually lashed out at him about his movie. And here he is now today with a brand new movie where he's actually moving the needle and making people aware. That was one of the sad things, though, is I asked him, are you getting support? I always ask this. Are you getting support? We have a majority in Congress that are Republicans, some of which are in your movie. Are they doing anything? And it wasn't a very optimistic answer, is that they are. Certainly not about 2,000 mules, since the election is coming very soon, next year, next month, really. We'll have Iowa caucuses in June.
Let's move forward. Let's move forward to that, because it occurred to me, I was doing some work last night, and I read an article in which someone said, well, we've got the best candidate for us in 2024 in Donald Trump. They've got the worst candidate for them in Joe Biden, should he be the candidate. I maintain that they're going to figure it out, but they have a very narrow window, in my opinion. I don't think they can wait until a convention. I think they would have such an uproar. I think there would be a backlash on them to the point that it would almost guarantee a Republican victory if that Republican's Trump. And the article was surrounding the premise that, well, even if all of these dynamics come together in a way that we believe it will, they'll steal it anyway.
They could.
But I believe that's on us to prevent the same type of shenanigans that went on in 2020. We have to be dedicated to the task ahead to ensure that these things don't happen again. And if they do happen again, we can't fault blinders because we clearly see how they accomplished some of these tasks in 2020. And a lot of that surrounded the COVID pandemic.
Well, okay. All right.
A lot to unpack there.
Yeah. And I've had the guy on, Patrick Kolbeck, who wrote the book 2020 Coup, who actually basically discovered that there are Wi-Fi chips inside voting machines. Okay. So if we go by the premise that you're talking about, is like, oh, the majority rules and they will win if they come out in force. Well, Trump had the most presidential votes for a Republican in the history of the Republican Party that came around when Lincoln was president, right? Back in the Civil War. So he did his job. He got more people to the polls than any Republican ever before, and they still swamped him by a couple million fake ballots. If you believe that, some people don't.
Sure.
I personally do. And then you have to say, wait a minute, all the promises that Trump made during his campaign, and then what he said he'd do during the 4 years, and then what he said he might do with the next 4 years, did he do it? I don't know. Is he the perfect candidate to win as a Republican, or is he the perfect candidate to fix all of these problems? There isn't such a person.
Well, I would agree with that. And I do believe he was earnest in his desire to, as he put it, drain the swamp and to correct some of the bureaucratic
Fired one guy.
Errors. However, no one ever suggested that the swamp wouldn't fight back. And I think the swamp most certainly did fight back. And they staved him off, and they used fake stories and, the Russian collusion nonsense that stymied him for 2+ years and got him off his game. If you believe, like me, that he was dedicated to the task, he certainly didn't accomplish the task. And that's where I think 2020 comes in, is that they had no interest. These embedded agencies like the FBI, CIA, and other intelligence gathering organizations, NSA, they had no interest in seeing him move that needle anyway toward doing what he said he wanted to do.
And Dinesh said similar, and I think Trump is on record of saying similar, is that he did not think the swamp was that deep and that wide. He thought, oh, the president makes the agenda, just like at Trump.
You can hire and fire. You can do, what you need to do.
And then he learned real quick, no. And now that's why they've got 100 of his lawyers tied up in litigation to say, like, well, if you were to win again, you're not going to have any support around you.
What do you think the best prescription? I was describing it in the first hour, my grumpy hour. So I'm better now. I was describing it in my first hour that, as we move forward with Donald Trump, I think a couple of these issue. I think the New York case will be gone long before spring, or maybe around spring. Yeah. I think the Florida case and the Georgia case will be around, but I think it's in his best interest to boot those until after the election cycle, because I have no faith that they are going to be fairly decided in their initial courts.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think they'll be able to do some kind of legalistic thing to push it off. But the ones that scare me are the ones where they're trying to keep them off the ballot, like Colorado. Mm-hmm. If they were to do that, obviously democracy is completely gone, because I think that's with the Electoral College.
Would you agree with me if I said that's too in your face?
No, because look at the trials that you just mentioned for Trump. Hunter Biden is going to court for illegal possession of a firearm, and they have somehow been able to subpoena Trump himself to say that he and Barr and some other lawyers targeted the man for doing what he did. So they're not saying I'm innocent. They're saying you targeted me, because otherwise you wouldn't even know about these things. So they're using the media, they're using the spin cycle to be able to drag him into yet another front to have to fight publicly while you're supposed to be running for the Iowa caucuses or the South Carolina primary.
But it certainly bolsters his presence, and it helps him. I mean, in the
Unless
primary,
he's off the ballot.
In the primary,
if California says you can't vote for Trump, how's he going to win those?
And maybe I'm wrong. And
they've done so many things they've never done before to a president and an ex-president. Why
I think you
not
get
assume they'll do everything?
you get that to the Supreme Court level, and they will destroy it. I mean, maybe I'm being naive when I say that.
Well, they don't treat him very well either. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. So it's a gamble. And I'd love it, but we're running out of time. There's only
I would
11
agree with
months
you
left.
that I don't put anything past California or Colorado or some of the other liberal states. They'll do whatever. I mean, they don't have the respect for the law that Steve Abramowicz. I mean, they use that against us because they know that we do respect the rule of law.
And that was my key point of today, is that the Supreme Court of Washington State is elected. They're not appointed like they are in Tennessee. So people don't even understand the mindset of what's it like to live in a state that has elected politicians who have to run for office and raise funds and whatever. And the answer is you get 93, where's that statistic here? 93%.
Look at all this paperwork.
I know. I bring receipts because the mob goes crazy. They get mad when I say they instead of she or something. 99% of significant contributions towards the campaigns of winning state Supreme Court candidates were from progressive sources. Not 9%, not 19%, 99%.
Is that in Washington?
That's in Washington State from 2013 to 2022. And if you get into the legislation that actually passed, it's all majority progressive stuff.
None of our state Supreme Courts. And I know that we have precious little to do with how they set it up in Washington. But I would say this. I lived in Alabama. I'm from Georgia, but I lived in Alabama for 20 years. And they elect their Supreme Court too in Alabama. And I hated it, despite the fact that conservatives won more often than not. Republicans won, I think, every statewide Supreme Court election while I was there for the 20 years I was there. But extreme amounts of money go into these races. And outside of identifying themselves as a Republican, this environment that you're in, I would have them on. And I stopped because, Steve Abramowicz would come on. He would present himself as a Republican candidate for, the Alabama Supreme Court. And I would ask him about his position on the issues, and he wouldn't answer any question that I asked him, saying, well, I can't answer that question. The judicial canon of ethics prevents me from doing so in case that there's a case coming before me. So I'm like, well, then what are we doing here?
Until it's poll tested, I can't tell you what we think, right?
Well, they hide behind that
Williamson
idea.
County School Board used to be a nonpartisan race. Now, a couple years ago, they became partisan. So you get Republicans running for that office who really aren't. But you only say so because they don't have a reason to say they're a Democrat, because they'll know they'll lose in that county, that type of thing. So in Washington, you pretty much know who you're buying and what results you're going to get. And you can look at the 6 most important cases that came out of there, healthcare, LGBTQ, you name it, that are not going to go the way a conservative would want them to go.
Of the items that Trump was able to accomplish during his years, I'm on record as saying and I don't think it's close, because everything that he was able to do has either already been undone by the Biden administration or could be undone by future Congress and future presidents. But the 3 Supreme Court justices, I think, is clearly, even if he somehow it's stymied and he doesn't become the 47th president of the United States after being the 45th, that legacy is so vital and important to the future of the republic. Would you agree?
100%. Yeah. Nope. That is the long-lasting one. The only other one would have been FBI 10-year. You get, when you're appointed FBI director, you get 10 years. When you're Supreme Court, it's life, right? Until you decide to step down. Ruth Bader Ginsburg went till the very last second. So yes, that is key. If he would have been there another 4 years, would he have been able to replace Kenji Jackson, I think her name is? Yeah, he would have. So he would have definitely kept that for a generation to come. Longest lasting legacy you're going to get is Supreme Court. Same thing with FDR and Lincoln.
Other than Dinesh, dadgummit, why do I do that? Other than Sousa, who else has been around recently on the podcast that you invite people to go and like? I know you want folks to see all of them, but
John Schneider, Dukes of Hazzard. It was on Halloween Eve with the trick-or-treaters ringing the doorbell in between. So yeah, he was great. Fantastic show there. Kind enough to put his on his Facebook with 1 million followers. And I should mention one thing about Donald Trump. Energy independence was probably the key to his real 4 years. I think that was great. And so one of my P1 listeners, if you know what that means in the business,
I do.
maybe your listeners don't, but anyway, he has listened to everything, and he just texted me and told me Trump energy independence was a big deal. His name is Eddie, and Eddie's amazing. So thanks, Eddie.
Thanks, Eddie, for listening to Steve, and thanks for being a P1. I hope you're a P1 with us too.